Hello, everyone. My name is Keisha Hawk Delegard. I want to welcome you to the Employer Spotlight featuring Alta Equipment. We have two representatives today from Alta. We have Sam and Sarah. Um, Thank you both for joining us today. Next slide, please. So before we get started, I would like to do some housekeeping. So first, we want to say thank you for exercising patience with us with our technology, with our new remote working environments. We just want to say thank you for your patience. Special thanks goes out to Q&A reporting for providing our captioning, and our interpreters, Jacqueline and Katie. Thank you so much for joining us today. In order to access your captioning, please press the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and choose Show Subtitles. We will have a Q&A portion for our event today during the training. If you do have questions during the training, please make sure you use the Q&A section at the end of the training. But also, if you have questions during the training, you can press the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Sarah and Sam. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Just want to confirm again, everybody can hear me okay? Sam, you can confirm? Okay, awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Keisha. We're excited to be working with the group and getting to talk to everybody today. First off, just kind of further introducing myself. So again, my name is Sarah Hudgens. I work in human resources with Alta Equipment Company. I've been with Alta for about 4 years now, and I've loved it. I support our about 12 locations from an HR perspective, and then do recruiting as well. So that kind of led me into this group today. And I don't know, Sam, if you want to just quickly introduce yourself as well.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am Sam Savoni. I am the recruiting manager here at Alta. I've been here about 1.5 years now. And my role is basically high-level recruiting for the whole company. So that entails, any new recruiting efforts that we're want to check out, and then all of the recruiting platforms that we use currently. And then I do some day-to-day recruiting as well, a lot in the New York area, and then some here in Michigan as well. And we're excited to be here. And then I'll let Sarah kick it off.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. So going over kind of those introductions. So a little bit about who we are. So as an employer, so Alta Equipment Company as a business. So we are considered an equipment dealership. So essentially what that means, you can think about it kind of in a loose interpretation, like a car dealership, in the sense that we represent different manufacturers within the equipment space, and we do the sales and service of that equipment. Sales could include new equipment, used equipment, rental equipment, etc. And then a big portion of our population is associated with the parts and service side of our business, which obviously supports that equipment that we sell. So similar to kind of a car dealership where you have like a Ford or a General Motors, the actual dealership themselves, we're not employed by each other, but we do have a very close relationship. So that's kind of how we're structured. We originated in the Metro Detroit area about 36 years ago. Since then, we've been growing immensely. So we're located all over the Midwest, Northeast, as well as Florida. And I guess we're talking about from an industry perspective, we have two, separate divisions of the organization. So we originated in the material handling space. So when I talk about equipment, I'm meaning forklifts, which if you know what that is, most people do, but anything that you'd use to store, move product within a warehousing environment, manufacturing, distribution center, things like that. So we have a separate division focused on those kinds of industries. And then we also have a different division, which would be our construction heavy equipment group. And they represent our Volvo heavy equipment line. So when you think of large competitors like Caterpillar, John Deere, things like that, the kind of equipment you see on the side of the road. So that would be kind of our separate other division. Today, we're going to be a little bit more focused on our material handling side, specifically our technician population. And that's our largest population that we employ, as well as our most difficult to recruit. So that's why we're talking a little bit more today, and we'll get into the details of that. But that's kind of the general introduction to us. So a little bit about the facts. So I know I went over kind of some of the basics, but from a size perspective, so we've got about It's actually closer, I think 2,200 employees now across the country, about 55 locations, did about $900 million in revenue last year, projected to do over $1 billion this year. Really excited about that. We also did go public last year, so we are officially a publicly traded company. That was a big milestone for us as a business. We're really excited to raise additional capital through that to continue on our growth streak. Lots of acquisitions, like I said, a big part of our story. Our technician population is incredibly important. That makes up almost half of our total workforce. And then there's some additional facts here of different brands that we represent from an OEM perspective, as well as some additional things, kind of facts about us. And we'll go to there you go. Cool. So just from a timeline, so I know I talked about 35-ish years ago is where we originated. As you can see from a growth perspective, that'll be a common theme throughout the presentation, helping you get to know who we are. So growth is a big part of our story. So as you can see, our acquisitions increased within frequency. We completed about 8 last year. That was our largest year yet, and we're still on track. I'm thinking there'll probably be a few more this year before the end of the year as well. So we were rated in Crain's Fast 50. So if you're from the Metro Detroit area, Crain's Detroit Business has put Alta in one of the fastest growing companies in Southeast Michigan for multiple years now, most recently the 10th fastest on their list, which is really exciting. Obviously, it's very difficult to grow unless you have you feel very solid in where you're at. So we have really great talent in our key leadership positions. We've kind of got our processes really well ironed out, our philosophy related to taking care of the customer and making that a central focus. So we've really been able to feel solid in those pieces in order to allow for this growth. Another piece with that, not necessarily growth related, but also some of the awards. The past few years, we have been considered a top workplace in Michigan. So how we get that award is essentially our employee population does a survey, and if we meet certain benchmarks based on the Detroit Free Process who puts it on, then we are considered a top workplace based on their analysis. So really, really excited and really proud to have received that the past few years. And obviously for those on the call, if it's something where it comes down to it one day where we're a good fit for you from an employment perspective, obviously I think that's something important to note. Obviously we want to enjoy the place we work. We want to feel like our employer is doing the things they need to do for their employees as well. All right, so from a locations perspective, so I know I talked about we've got a few different regions. So Midwest is where we originated. That's kind of our core, I guess, what we consider. So as you can see, we've got locations all over the state of Michigan for sure, Northwest Indiana, as well as Chicagoland, kind of Illinois area. So for those on the call, that's probably the most applicable locations to you. So if you want to take a look at, something sticks out that you want to follow up with after the call, or when you're taking a look at our website, some of those different locations, feel free to kind of take note of that now. Like I said, we also do have a region on the Northeast coast, as well as the state of Florida as well. So a little bit kind of about our business and our industry. So number one, kind of one of the pillars, safety is incredibly important to us. Like I said, we are an equipment dealership. So working around heavy equipment on a regular basis for a lot of our team members, safety is really key. So something that we definitely value there. From a parts perspective, so like I talked about, we have service and parts portion of our business. Parts is important to make sure service has what they need, which in turn make sure that we're taking care of the customer appropriately. Service, definitely our key focus area in the business, making sure, especially from a customer perspective, equipment doesn't do its job unless it's running. So 24-hour service is definitely important in being able to make sure that we're taking care of our customers appropriately, as well as providing additional solutions for our customers to make sure that they're maximizing their material handling needs or construction equipment needs. So some of the awards, so I talked about a little bit, obviously the Cranes Detroit Business from a fastest growing company perspective, top workplaces. Here's just another grouping of different awards that we've received over the years. When we're talking about OEMs that we represent, essentially that's our flagship brand. So the equipment that we have the closest relationship to and the equipment that we sell from a branding perspective. So we have gotten, there's multiple dealers across the country that do that. And we have gotten recognized in one of those top dealers in that space for multiple years. So on the material handling side, that's considered Heister and Yale. So I don't know if anybody would recognize those names, but if you've ever been in some sort of warehousing environment or things like that, it's typically kind of the yellowish color equipment. We'll show you a few pictures, but Heister and Yale would be that equipment who we represent, and then they recognize us as one of the top dealers in the country for that. Volvo, a heavy equipment line for our construction group, same thing. We have consistently been considered one of their top dealers in their space as well. Same thing with kind of some additional magazine items. So Equipment World, we were considered Big Iron Dealer of the Year. Again, in the equipment space, that means a lot. Maybe for the average person, not so much, but if you want to do a little bit of research, feel free. And here's just a few others as well that we've gotten over the past few years from different dealers and things like that. So here's more about the products. So again, these would be the different manufacturers that we represent. So I won't go into too much detail. Again, I think for the average person, probably doesn't mean that much, but when you're taking a look at it, you may recognize a few of these. So for example, Toro, I think they make kind of some smaller equipment that kind of the average person would potentially use. Genie, they make scissor lifts or boom lifts. You'll typically see those in a warehouse, or if you go into Lowe's or Home Depot or things like that, you'll see that there. Link about cranes, that's a key one that sticks out. So really it runs the gamut between, we get into really large equipment down to kind of smaller equipment. Even our construction equipment group does rentals to kind of the average person. So if they need some sort of skid steer or something like that, other people call it a bobcat, to work on something in their yard, we do that up to really large fleet customers where we'll sell them 20 to 30 trucks at a time. So here's another example of some of that equipment. So as you can see, this is specifically tailored to our material handling group. So Heister and Yale, I talked about that yellow equipment a little bit earlier. So there's just kind of different fuel systems that the equipment runs off of, which we'll go into a little bit more detail. But essentially on the top left, that would be a liquid propane powered forklift. In the middle, that's a shipping container handler. So typically you'd find that in kind of a marine type of environment, taking the huge containers off the trucks, putting them on the trucks, things like that. And then obviously, I think this was probably electric powered on the top right. And then here's just an example of some additional ones on the bottom. So that Genie lift in the middle, odds are if you don't now, you'll notice it later on now when you're going into different kind of warehousing type of spaces. That's pretty typical, and just a few other products that we represent as well. So here's an example of actually our own facility. So essentially, here's just a few pictures from our corporate headquarters. So our tires department, some of our inventory, the equipment that could be housed here is our rental fleet. So we have rentals that we will send to different customers to utilize either on a short-term basis or a long-term basis. It could be equipment that is used that we're refurbishing and repairing that to resell to the customers, or it could be new equipment that we're going to prep with different attachments that it needs or things like that to make sure that it's prepared to go out. And I think there'll be a few more pictures like this, just as an example. So on the bottom portion, so this is, as you can see, the warehouse is enormous, but on the bottom portion, that would be just kind of some additional equipment. Top two portions would be our parts bay. So when we talk about our service group needs the parts to support what they do, we have all of our parts locked up in the parts cage, and then we're able to get the appropriate parts to either our customers or our technicians. think there's one more. So here's just another one of some additional equipment, different kinds, obviously all lined up here. Definitely walking in the warehouse, you could walk for days and looking at all kinds of equipment there. So a little bit about kind of the industry itself. So I think we went into it a little bit, but one of the biggest things I think I'd want the group to take away from today is just better understanding the material handling industry and market. So essentially when you think of, for example, Amazon. So Amazon changed the game, especially for a lot of retail operations, in the sense that instead of going to the store and you buying something, instead the warehouses are enormous, and now it's kind of that direct ship type of model. So that's not going to go away. If anything, it's just going to increase. So I think that that is a key indicator of, obviously everybody wants to be like the Apples, the Googles, the Amazons of the world, of how they're adjusting their processes. So this industry as a whole is not just stable, but it's going to be growing immensely year after year. So the annual growth rate, this is just from one of the studies, 6.8% between 2019 to 2025, and who knows, it could even be more than that. So definitely from a material handling industry perspective, something to definitely pay close attention to. From a dealership, just kind of describing in a little bit more detail about what we do. So we do consider ourselves a full solutions provider from material handling and warehousing applications. We went over some of that. So for example, some of our largest name customers, we do work with Ford, GM, and Chrysler. So big three here in Michigan. We do work with Menards, Home Depot, Lowe's. We have an Amazon account in Chicago. Essentially, when you think of the different customer bases, like you can see, it could be manufacturing, food, healthcare, warehousing, automotive supply chain. Essentially, anybody who would store or move product would be a potential customer of ours. Went over, I think, the new, used, and rental piece. We also, kind of a different portion of the company, just to know, is we do the racking and conveyor systems as well. So beyond just the equipment, dock doors, put those in. We also do operator training on our equipment, which actually, this is a good point to point that out. We actually do not employ any operators. So we do not employ any forklift operators at all. That's a common misconception for us. If you're somebody who has your operator's license and you would like to look at that, definitely go look at our customers. They drive the equipment. We sell it and fix it. So we don't employ any operators, but we will complete the training as that's required, as well as a new thing in the space that's coming about is automation. So obviously, again, kind of on the cutting edge there, related to equipment operating itself and not needing somebody to do that. Obviously, bringing down workers' comp claims, bringing down kind of some additional cost, operator error, things like that. A lot of our customers are looking long and hard at some of the automation piece of equipment that we sell too. So here is a video. So just for the group, this is technically tailored towards our customers. So just kind of keep that in mind through that lens, but I think it helps. Here's another one of our locations that goes over better understanding our equipment, what we do, but just kind of seeing it through that lens. Awesome. All right. I think I've only seen that video a few times. And actually, I was at that event. I just found myself in the video as we went along. So now I will go ahead and switch gears and I'll stop talking for a while and Sam can pick up from here.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about recruiting. And with this, the majority of my portion is going to be talking about technicians because like Sarah said, that is almost half, if not more, of our employees. So we really do focus on technicians and technician hiring, and it is our most important. And I think Sarah mentioned it is our most difficult as well. Later on in the presentation, I will hit on the other positions that we do have open so that if you're not interested in the technician roles or that's not for you, we do have some other ones, but I did really want to take this time to highlight this particular position. So like we keep mentioning, technicians are our driver of revenue for our business. So when the technicians go to the different customers, when they're fixing the forklifts or doing the preventative maintenance or whatever they're doing at that customer, we're billing that customer for their time, for our technicians' time. So that is how we make the majority of our revenue, is by going in and servicing those technicians or servicing those forklifts for the customer. So when we're looking for technicians, we're not only just looking for those technical skills, which I think is what most people think of when you think of mechanics or technicians. You really think of somebody that can do the mechanic work, which is what we need. We do need somebody that can do the mechanic works. We do look for people that are mechanically inclined, obviously, that have that automotive background. This is a good point or place to point out. You don't need forklift experience. Obviously, that's a plus, but we are well equipped to train. So just coming from that mechanical type background, coming from an automotive, maybe even just tinker in your garage, whatever it may be, that's what we look for on that technical side. But we also need people with superb customer service skills. All of our technicians are kind of the face of Alta. They're going into the customers on a daily basis. They're also, they might get gas on their way to a customer, so they're wearing their Alta logo, and they are, they're the face of Alta. So they need to make sure that those customer service skills are top notch. And so we really look for a combo of both technical and customer service skills when we're looking for technicians. As Sarah mentioned, we do have a wide variety of types of equipment. So it's kind of cool. Our technicians aren't just working on, let's say, cars all day like automotive mechanics might be working on. They're really working on a vast variety of different types of equipment. So like Sarah mentioned, that could be gas, that could be diesel, that could be electric, that could be alternative sources, which has been very huge lately. So that, they get to kind of get a feel of all different types of equipment and not just working on one all the time. They also are kind of a salesperson. So we're obviously servicing to all types of businesses. Again, like Sarah touched on, it could be automotive, it could be warehouse, it could be even hospitals, schools, anywhere that they need to move material, we sell to. So when those technicians are there on site, if they see that maybe a piece of equipment could need new tires, or maybe if they had one more forklift, they could do, so many more units or move so many more things. They could go and talk to those, people that work at that warehouse and say, hey, I noticed this. Would you want to try this, this, and this? So they do kind of sometimes have to put on their sales hat to be able to kind of help the customer out and point them in the right direction of how they could do things even better. So we wanted to go over just the basic responsibilities of what a technician does or would need. And so we're going to specifically focus on the field technicians. So we do have, I would say, many types of technicians, but two major ones. We have a field technician and we have a shop technician. So the shop technician, just like the name sounds, is somebody who's going to work in the shop basically 100% of the time. And then a field technician is somebody who's going to work out in the field. With that means going to the customer sites and doing the repairs on site. So like bullet point number 1 says, they're performing that preventative maintenance. We also call that PMs on the customer forklifts and other material handling equipment. So most of the time when the mechanics are going to the customer sites, they're doing just those preventative maintenance. So that could just be making sure everything's running smoothly, an oil change, making sure the tires are good, whatever it may be, but it's more of those smaller preventative maintenance type mechanic work rather than the bigger fixes that will be done in the shop. So they also diagnose and repair all forms of the equipment. So again, if something is broken, They can tell the customer, hey, this is what's happening and this is what I'm going to need to do to fix it. They also need to make sure that they're doing everything in a timely and efficient and professional manner. They're obviously, like I mentioned, representing Alta. So they need to make sure that they're doing everything to the best of their ability, and they're making sure that they're doing everything that the customer needs timely and efficiently. Here's this customer service bullet point coming up again. They need to make sure that they're performing exceptional customer service, that they're managing their workload. They are working independently while they're on the road. So they need to have really good time management. They get, we'll go into this more, but they get their jobs for the day, but they need to make sure obviously those jobs get done without, a ton of supervision throughout the day. And then they also will submit all of their paperwork we have tablets and laptops. So some technicians have tablets, some have laptops. I think more laptops are coming later this year for our technicians. So they do need to complete all paperwork once the job is done. And then they are responsible for their company vehicle. So that company vehicle is theirs. We'll get into more detail in, I think, the next slide. But this company vehicle, they keep all of their tools in, and they have to make sure that they have everything they need in that vehicle for the day. They need to make sure that they're incorporating Alta's guiding principles into their daily activities, and that they're performing any other duties that are assigned, so that they're, if something comes up last minute, they are doing that so that they can get everything done for the customer. And then a really important bullet point is just reliable attendance and being ready to work when you're supposed to show up. So we want to make sure, obviously, if we tell a customer we're there at 7, we're there at 7. And if they're expecting us Monday through Friday, we're there Monday through Friday. So we want to make sure that all of our technicians are reliable and on time. So some of the qualifications that we do look for when looking for technicians, obviously, like I mentioned, previous forklift experience is very desirable, but not a must. We have good training programs. We'll talk about it in a minute. But we do, obviously, any forklift mechanic experience is a big plus. We also like to say or mention that military experience is also very applicable. So those are some of the codes that would go along with that. But obviously they're working on very similar equipment. So we want to make sure that that's included in there as well. Field experience is highly preferred. So that would be somebody else who maybe in their previous role was out with a company van, going to customer sites, working independently. Something, again, we can train, but it is highly preferred. We do also like it if you have electrical or liquid propane experience. Those are two of the major forklifts and equipment that we work on. So obviously having that background is very desirable. Here comes that mechanical aptitude. I would say this is what we look for. One of the most important aspects of what we look for in a technician is their mechanical aptitude. Can they pick up on things easily? Can they pick up on different ways that we do things easily? Obviously, we're used to training, so making sure that somebody has that mechanical aptitude to be able to pick up on what we're training. You do need to have your own tools. We don't provide those. We will go into kind of more detail on what we do provide in terms of tools, or what we provide in terms of insurance, but we do require that the technicians does have their own tools. To start, it's not a huge amount of tools that you need, but over time you would probably get a lot more into your kind of toolbox, per se. You also do need to have a clean driving record and a valid driver's license. Obviously, to be a field technician, you are going to be driving. And then you do just need to be able to use a computer or have some computer skills, because you will be using some of these computer programs that we mentioned in that last bullet point. And you'll also be doing those different orders or completing those orders and putting in information into our system to keep track of what you did. So that computer knowledge is going to be a must. Just going over a day in the life, we thought it would be interesting just to kind of walk you through what that looks like. So typically you would arrive at your first customer at 7 a.m. So what that means is if your customer is an hour away, you're leaving at 6 a.m. and you're getting there at 7. We do try to obviously put you at the customer that's closest to your home. So, hopefully it isn't always an hour drive, but sometimes it is, and especially in more of our remote areas like up north, Traverse City, Sault Ste. Marie, which is one of our new locations, more on the construction side, but they might have to drive a little bit further to get to the customer. Once you get to the customer site, you're from, let's say, 7 to noon, you're going to be completing those PMs or preventative maintenance, like I explained before. So that would be doing any of that. So I guess the day before, you would kind of know what you were walking into, what you would be doing for that day, and then you would start working on that and do that throughout the morning. While you're doing that, you would be recording the service that you're working on or that you're completing. So like this benches, you would have a tablet or a computer, and that's where you would keep track of everything that you did that day. And then again, here comes that customer service side of things. You're going to be communicating with the customer. You're going to be telling them any concerns. You're going to go over what you did for the day. You're going to just help them answer any questions that they might have, but you're really going to talk to the customer once you're all complete to say, hey, this is what I did. This is what I think that I should do next time, and answer any questions. Then you'll call the customer or the dispatcher real quick to just see what your next customer is going to be or where they're going to be. Once you have that from the dispatcher, you do have a half an hour lunch, and then you would get to the next customer site, do the same thing you just did that morning, and complete any of that new customers, PMs, record it and tell the customer what you did. Let's say around 2, 3 o'clock, you'll go back to the branch if needed to pick up parts for the next day. So that goes back to keeping your van stocked with inventory. You'll go back to the customer or back to our branch, pick up any parts that you might need for the next day. And then you can drive home in your company vehicle. And then we'll talk about it again in a second, but that company vehicle you do get to take home every day, which is great. Perk as well. And then you'll just talk to the dispatcher one more time so that in the morning you know where you're going to go to. So going over a little bit of the technician benefits. So this first bullet point I think is one of the best of all. So our work schedule is 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. If you work a little bit of overtime, maybe it's 7 to 4, 7 to 5, but it is that Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30 work schedule. So a lot of these automotive mechanics that are maybe at like a Jiffy Lube or something like that, they're working 7 days a week, or they might be working till 8 or 9 at night. So this is a really big bonus, I think, is that you're working those set hours Monday through Friday rather than working, any day of the week. Another benefit is if you did have to go in after hours. So if one of our customers had an emergency, like Sarah was talking about, we are 24/7, we're on call if the customer needs it. If you do need to go in after hours, you're guaranteed 4 hours of you're guaranteed 4 hours of pay. So even if you go and work for half an hour and then it's fixed, you do get that 4 hours guaranteed. You also are not paid an hourly flat rate. So if you're not familiar with what that is, when you do work, again, it's mostly in the automotive world, but you're working on one project at a time, so that you get paid per project or per job that you're completing. So, if there's only 2 jobs that come in for that day, you're getting paid for those 2 jobs. Or, it's going to kind of force you maybe to work faster because you want to get the most jobs in for that day. We do pay hourly, so you're not having to worry about, how many jobs am I going to have this day? Is this job going to take a really long time? You can kind of just focus on your work and go throughout your day knowing that you're getting paid no matter what. As I mentioned, the company van, you do get to take that home every day. So that's going to save on miles on your car. You do get a gas card, so that's going to save on gas. You obviously can drive it to and from work every day, so you're not driving your own vehicle to and from work. You're not paying for gas to and from work. And then we like to mention, if you're in Illinois or a state or an area that does have tolls, we provide that iPass as well. And then we do have company paid cell phones so that you'll have that throughout the day in case something happens or you need to call the dispatcher, like I mentioned, or a customer or whatever it may be, you do have that. And then company laptops, more are coming this year. I think we've already started to roll them out, but you would either have a tablet or a laptop so that you would have that on the road for doing any, finishing any projects or just taking down notes when you're done. So just continuing on, I wanted to touch base on the tool insurance. So like I mentioned, we do require you to have your own tools, but we do insure your tools for you. So actually up to 75,000, which is a lot. So usually, you know, we have our guys that have, or our technicians, I should say, that have $1,000, $2,000 tool set, but then we have people that have 15, you know, 20, 25,000 and plus tool sets. So this tool insurance is very key. And I think a huge bonus, especially for a lot of these technicians that have the more expensive tool sets, knowing that they're insured. And then Sarah, I just want to turn it back over to you just for kind of going over more of these incentive programs.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Sam. So on the bonus incentive program, so Sam talked about it a little bit related to the interactions with the customers that the technician has. So some of these are kind of crossover. So if somebody's working as a shop technician or something like that. So for example, we have safety incentives for our technicians. So essentially a certain amount of time that the branch is going without any sort of safety incidents at the branch, there's an incentive there financially for everybody to kind of be working towards the same goal, making sure that we're focusing on safety first. Same thing on beat or meet the quote. So essentially the technician is quoting a job based on how much time they think that it's going to take them from a labor perspective. If they're able to perform above that, there's going to be some incentive coming back their way for being very efficient in the work that they do. So there is some incentives there. Branch profit sharing is another one. So again, kind of that motivation in order for everybody working towards the same goal. As the goal is in order to have every location be profitable. So as that profitability happens every month, then there's going to be some kickback to the employee population, especially our technicians, to reward them for doing their job very well. And then the last piece, the tire leads and sales leads. So this is that key part that Sam talked about from interfacing with the customer portion. So if you're at the customer site, and say you're a field technician, you get to know their operation better than probably majority of our sales representatives do. So as you're interfacing with the customer, you get to see how they use the equipment. You get to see how their operators use the equipment, not just what management says how their operators use the equipment. So you're able to kind of get an inside scoop of seeing all of that. So if you find some opportunities, kind of being a business partner with the customer as well as Alta, and find some opportunities for us from a sales perspective. So let's say they need, increased production is coming up. They could use some additional short-term rental equipment in order to meet their needs during that time, and you pass along the referral, or some additional trucks, or maybe they need different types of trucks to come in. You pass those leads on to a sales representative and it follows through with the sale, then there's some kickback coming your way. And we actually just did revamp this program. So it's always been very lucrative for our technicians, but it actually has increased even more so. And you're not required to utilize it, but it's definitely available to you, especially if you're somebody that feels comfortable communicating with the customer. And then next piece would be the company uniforms. So that's pretty typical. Obviously, those will all be provided for you. And then the OEM program with raises. Say if you want to go to the next slide, I can describe that a little bit. So OEM, when we say OEM, essentially what we're talking about here is Hyster and Yale. So that is the manufacturer that we represent with the equipment that we sell and service. So they have a manufacturer training program that they pass along to. We have in-house trainers that we employ with Alta. So they work closely with our technicians and put on different training sessions in order to make sure that they have the training that they need on new equipment, on existing equipment, on different types of systems that are the machines operate off of. So there's a combination of online modules that they'll complete through this training program, as well as after hours in-class training that our in-house trainers would put on for them. So it's a 4 certification level program essentially. And our top 2 certification levels are considered our master and elite technician. If you complete your master level technician program, you get a $1 an hour raise just by completing that. If you complete the elite level technician program, you get an additional $2 an hour raise. So just by investing in your career and your knowledge, you're going to get a $3 an hour bump by completing the training as it's available. Typically, this will take 3 to 5 years to get through all of that, but we've seen people do it really quickly depending on how focused they are. The online modules, you as the technician have essentially total timing on your own to complete those whenever that works for you. And then the after hours training, that's something where we would need to schedule and we want to make sure that we've got enough technicians to be putting the class on to make sure that we're being efficient with that. But definitely the training program is key there. The other portion of the training that we can go into a little bit more detail is on the job. That's where majority of it is in place. So that's where you link up with another technician. They kind of teach you the ways of how the job works. But we also do have some more structured training like this, where you get to get that straight from the manufacturer.
Good, thanks, Sarah. So just to finish off here, we did want to just mention our benefits. This is for all salaried and non-salaried, so technicians hourly as well. So not just technicians, it is for everybody. So we do have a very competitive benefits package that includes, we do have paid time off. You do get the more years that you've worked at the company. On top of that, you do get 10 paid holidays. And then you also get the health benefits as well. So we offer short-term and long-term disability, company paid life and AD&D insurance. We have Blue Cross Blue Shield, a PPO plan. We have Delta Dental, iMed Vision, and then we do have a very good 401k match that kicks in after a year. You are able to start contributing after about 30 days though. And then I wanted to just touch, obviously, how do you apply? So you can go to careers@altaequipment.com. Right here is what you'll go and then what you'll see. You can search either by just the job you're looking for, or I really recommend searching under that locations tab so that you can see everything that's open at that location you're interested in. So you can go to that drop down and click that locations tab and just filter by the location you're interested in. I guess I also just want to touch on, I know this is for industrial, but I wanted to, we do have positions in construction and a few of our other areas as well. So I think those do all come up when you just look at the page, but you can kind of filter through each of them if there was another area you wanted to learn more about. And then I know I mentioned this earlier and I haven't forgotten. So we do have other job opportunities. So we have administrators, so that could be a sales admin, a service admin. We have them in HR. We have them all across the board. So different admin jobs do come up quite often. Like we mentioned, we have dispatchers at every branch. So that is another job that comes up every once in a while that might be open. We have many different parts jobs. So parts editors, parts clerks, many more parts jobs, parts managers, warehouse specialists, everything like that. We also have all of the normal shared services that you would think of, like accounting, HR, IT, marketing, etc. And then we have different management opportunities as well. One thing I wanted to point out is if you're not at that manager level, we do always try to promote within first rather than going external. So if management is a goal of yours, we do promote trainings, like Sarah mentioned, not only in the technician world, but in others as well to get to you to that management level. And then finally, we have tons of sales opportunities as well. So as Sarah mentioned, we have many different sides of our business. So you could do used sales, rental sales, new sales, or even aftermarket sales. So a lot of different opportunities in the sales world as well. And I think that about wraps it up. So any questions?
All right, thank you. This is Craig Saunders, VRC with Michigan Rehabilitation Services, here to pass along some questions that we received during the event. I've got quite a few towards the end here, so I'm going to try to catch them all. But let's start out with kind of the application, applying for Alta. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe what might catch your eye when looking at a resume or something you want to see in there, or any application tips you might have?
Yeah, great question. So I think first and foremost, if you're applying to the technician job, any mechanical experience you have. So I even like to tell people, like, if you have just worked in your garage, put that on your resume so we know that you've done that. Obviously highlight any professional mechanic jobs that you've had as well. And then just make sure it's, nice and clean and concise. We really want to make sure that we can, sometimes we're just looking through all these applications, and one that really would catch our eye, I would, speaking for Sarah, but is something that really has everything laid out for us to see right there, maybe on that first or second page. So trying to make it as concise as possible is also a huge plus. And I think that goes for all positions as well, is just making sure that everything, kind of your highlighted abilities and what you've done are right there at the top, so that we can see those right when we open your resume.
And then I
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
All of that is true for Sam. Just a few additional items that I would just verify. Guess would be not really a pet peeve, but something that as a recruiter, we constantly get asked when we talk to the hiring managers or we run into issues. Please verify that all of your contact information is correct. We do run into that every once in a while. So just double check, make sure there's any typos because it's the most frustrating thing in the world. You're trying to get a hold of somebody and it's the wrong number or something like that. So definitely making sure that contact information is up to date. The other little tip that I don't think is talked about a lot, but consistent work history is something that is always going to be preferable. So if you've been at a location for typically 1 to 2 years or longer, as opposed to, 1 year at a time, things like that. But if you are somebody that was in that situation where you did move jobs, more frequently than typical, sometimes I find that it is helpful if you actually put in kind of parentheses on your resume and kind of give some reason behind it, kind of better understand it was a better opportunity, there was a layoff, something like that. I think that's something that isn't talked about a lot, but just makes things easier on the recruiting side is that we already have some of that information going in and can speak to your stability associated with your resume.
Great, thank you. And on top of that, I know you'd mentioned earlier, I might have been Sam talking about some of the experiences they have as technicians working with electric and propane. Is there any diesel within your facility? Or is that another good thing to have on your resume, having diesel experience?
Yeah, I'll let Sarah follow up on this as well, but definitely something that we would look for. We also on the construction side, that's definitely almost a must-have is that diesel experience. So I would say on the material handling, it is a plus and definitely something that we would look at as well.
I would say just to add on to that too is not so much, it doesn't matter so much for the applicant, but just to take note of our different locations is some of our locations have a closer relationship with different industries based on where they're located. So that plays a role into it as well. So for example, our Chicagoland area, there's a high focus on electric trucks, especially associated with emissions and things like that within warehousing spaces. So sometimes that will dictate some of that. And then on the diesel side, for example, the largest portion of diesel that we'll see is kind of that Northwest Indiana, southwest suburbs of Chicago, southeast suburbs of Chicago, where we'll see more kind of diesel equipment within our customers. So sometimes it'll be dictated by the location and the customer base for the area as well.
You just answered another question about the work that were done in different areas. So, and on top of that, we had a question. You had shown the map earlier and it showed a lot of locations in southern Michigan. Someone had asked about any locations in the Upper Peninsula.
So we do have Sault Ste. Marie, that's on our construction side. And then I think our next closest would be Traverse City. We also have Alpena, again, that's on the construction side, but that's pretty close up there as well.
Okay. Someone had asked about the best time to inform during an interview about a need for an accommodation. And then it asked a little bit more about what the process is at Alta to request a reasonable accommodation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So I would say all of our positions typically are getting a phone interview first, and your phone interview is somebody who resides in the HR department. So whether it's someone who works in kind of our general HR role or more of the recruiting role, but I would say if you feel comfortable kind of expressing at that time, you don't necessarily go into detail in that process, but if you can just kind of start the conversation, hey, here's something that I think I want to talk a little bit more about. Can we start discussing that? And I think that's where the employee with human resources, the recruiter will be able to pair up with the hiring manager and help them kind of work through that as well, better understanding the accommodation conversation. And so we're asking the right questions and making sure that we're getting you good information on that as well.
Okay, thank you. We had a couple comments. There are more questions, but I just want to bring up some comments about somebody mentioned Alta Equipment seems like a great place to work. And then we had another comment from our division director, Jenny Pyatt. She said, thank you, Sam and Sarah, for the great info shared on becoming a team member of Alta Equipment. We appreciate your longstanding partnership and taking the time to be with us today and prepare this info for colleagues and talent pool. Does Alta consider opportunities such as internships and apprenticeships as well? And on top of that, we do have our Michigan Career Technical Institute Someone had asked about a student who had automotive and electronic experience, if they might be able to speak with you about an informational interview. So subject of the question, internships, apprenticeships, informational interviews.
Yeah, we definitely have both. For internships, I would say we usually categorize those as more of, kind of those positions I talked about in that last slide. So more of the shared services type roles, but we definitely have those come open from time to time. And then if Sarah, do you want to talk more about kind of the apprenticeship programs or opportunities we've had?
Yep, for sure. So this is a key area that we're really especially paying attention to right now. Obviously, it's, as I'm sure everybody's aware, but the trades in general are a highly desired field for a lot of employers, but we don't necessarily have the amount of potential employees to pull from that field right now. So definitely that's a key area that we're evaluating within the company. We do employ kind of straight out of school, tech school, employees, which have been really fantastic for us. On certain instances, we can accommodate some sort of part-time while an individual is going to school. We love if we're able to make that work. The only thing that we typically run into that's an issue there is from a schedule perspective. So for a full-timer, 7 to 3:30 is an awesome schedule, Monday through Friday. If you're somebody that's going to class during the day, then obviously that makes it a little bit difficult logistically from an hours perspective, being able to make the most of that time. So we absolutely love to have the conversation. If you're somebody that falls within that category, you know somebody that falls within that category that would need some sort of part-time or maybe some sort of internship, like there's a period of time, maybe a summer or a certain semester that you would be able to work full-time. Just if you can still apply, you can reach out to us, or you can still just apply to the general technician role, and then we'll be able to determine that and talk that through at that time. So don't worry about just because you don't see a specific posting at the location for an intern or an apprentice or something like that. Just go ahead and still submit your resume to our general technician posting, and we can work through the details at that time. Did I answer all those questions, or was there a follow-up that I missed?
Last part was about the informational interview, which would basically be, in this case, a student who wanted to learn more about your business and see if it might be a good fit for them to come in and have a discussion, maybe get a tour.
Yeah, of course. So we're definitely open to it. If you're able to, there was on the last slide, but careers@altaequipment.com is our general recruiting email. So if that individual, or feel free to follow up with kind of those on behalf of MRS that are on the call, they can get you our contact information and we can start that process. But definitely if we need another follow-up info session, or if we can start that for sure.
Great, thank you. We had a question about if you had stated that you need more technicians, you don't have enough. Are people relocated to cover other areas that have need, or do they pretty much maintain the location they're hired at?
That's a good question. So I would say typically they're at the same location. So there's certain instances where a transfer may be necessary. So for example, I can think of one off the top of my head. It wasn't necessarily a transfer due to business needs per se, but it was the personal transfer. So we had somebody that was, I think, located in Grand Rapids area. And of course, who doesn't want to live in Traverse City if you have the opportunity to live in Michigan? So there was an opportunity in Traverse City. It made sense. And so that is something where if we're able to, we love to accommodate, transfers around if it works for a business. We have had other opportunities where we would approach typically technicians or other positions as well. If we have additional opportunities we think they'd be a good fit for, and if they'd be open to relocation from time to time, that will happen. But I would say our technician population is so valuable where they're at that unless they pose the question to us, typically we aren't asking to relocate them.
Okay. Next questions. We had a few questions on internal mobility, and one specific question on if you entered as a field technician, what would be the next step up if you were progressing?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so definitely this is something that we take pride in as an organization, being able to move individuals out of there. So like I said, obviously we're beating a dead horse there with if you want to be a technician your entire life, you will have a job. you'll have a job here, you'll have a successful job. You'll be able to grow within that field and within that role. If you're somebody who wants to eventually move out of that role, we have had technicians move into sales. So both new equipment sales as well as service sales. So that's considered our aftermarket group. So aftermarket is typically the best start in sales for a technician because that's what you're in, all day long of how the service works. We also do have training opportunities, like I said. So our trainers put on the training classes as well as they kind of act as technical communicators. So especially if you're one of our very advanced technicians, as you progress in your career, kind of being that go-to for other technicians, that's a really great option. Service management is another option. So managing other technicians, shop supervisor type of roles, definitely those. And then there are opportunities, for example, if with the dispatcher, service administration, some of those administrative roles to support the service department. Our opportunities typically aren't as much of a promotion per se, but it would be a transition of skills into more of that desk life type of environment, if that's something that you want to get to at some point and out of actually doing the physical labor of it.
Okay, thank you. We had a question on your training and onboarding process, maybe in terms of timeline, in terms of requirements.
Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of tackle the onboarding side of that question. So our typical process is that you would I'll start kind of from the interview process. So you would interview with, like Sarah mentioned, somebody from HR or recruiting over the phone typically. And then we'd have you come in for an in-person interview with the hiring manager and potentially somebody from his team or her team. With technicians, we do have a separate e-skill assessment that we also give in during the interview. And then there would be an offer right after that. So it is usually a pretty quick process from start to finish, obviously pending schedules and everything like that. But the process in general should be pretty quick. After that, we do have everybody take a drug and background assessment. If that is all good, then we would get you started and we'd figure out a definitive start date. Once you got going, we do have an employee onboarding presentation that we do every other Tuesday. So that would really get you up and running once you got started on your first day. So that would help you get, your benefits, everything else that you would need in terms of getting started going there. And then we have a whole, actually, Sarah really was leading this, but a whole book that you'll get on your first day as well that goes over the employee handbook, what you need to do in that first week, and then kind of what your first just week in general, our first few weeks will look like. So we really try to set everybody up for success, not only through the interview process, but through onboarding and then right into your first day.
And Sarah, did you have anything to add on the training onboarding side? You're muted, sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. So from the training perspective for the technicians, so yes, same kind of went over, that's our general process for all employees, technician specific. So I went over that structured training that we offer. From an on-the-job training, typically what you can expect is all of our technicians, no matter their background, start off in the shop, get acclimated to the equipment, get to know your manager, how to get your parts, how to complete your work orders, things like that. So you'll shadow another technician in the shop. From there, once you're more comfortable and confident, we do kind of do a dual evaluation. So our expectation is that you're letting us know how you're feeling on your training, if there's gaps in your training, areas that you want to improve, things like that, making sure that we're meeting that during that training process in the shop. And then from there, we would typically pair you up with a technician out on the road. So you would kind of better understand the cadence of the day, paired up with them, see how their day-to-day goes and doing their job. And then eventually we move you in your own company vehicle to start doing typically just focused on preventative maintenance. So there's more of a true cyclical nature of the day. And then lastly, you would kind of graduate into doing larger scale service calls, which takes more diagnostic troubleshooting type of work where that's really a lot more problem solving focused. So definitely there's a gradual transition from a training perspective. But the key part I would stress as well is we're going to be evaluating and asking for touch bases from you, but we do ask that the individual is giving us feedback based on having an investment and an ownership in their own training as well.
All right, thank you both. And then in the essence of time, we do have a lot more questions that we are going to bring to you after the event because we do not have enough time to answer all of them. But we'll ask one more question regarding felonies. We've heard from some of our coworkers that you're felon friendly in the past and wondered if that's still the case. And if you could talk a little bit more about that subject of felonies.
Yep. So we definitely are. So we are not a, you have a felony and, you're just written off. It's not a conversation. There are certain offenses that we do typically is kind of a deal breaker for us. And we can get into that a little more detail if there's an individual basis. But majority of them, we do try and take multiple factors into account in order to evaluate someone's record. So we take into account how long ago it happened, what the offense was, what position the person's going to be in. So for example, of course, if there's, someone has been charged with embezzlement in the past, we're probably not going to put them in our accounting department. You know what I mean? Just trying to be thoughtful about that and making sure that we're putting the person in the best place for success, but we're also making sure that we're being thoughtful as a business in doing that. So I would say it's more of an individual basis, but definitely not a one and done type of situation for us at all.
Okay, great. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Linda Watson for her to close up today's presentation.
Thanks so much, Craig. And thank you, Sam and Sarah, graciously for being here. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate your time and all the information that you have provided today to all of us at Vocational Rehabilitation, but also our customers as well. Since we do have a ton of questions that still have gone unanswered, I will try my best to work with Sam and Sarah to get some of those questions answered for you and attach that to a follow-up email provided to the VR counselors and the registrants who attended today. Once again, we thank you for attending this event. And as you can see on our screen, the next steps for you, if you are a candidate who is interested in becoming a part of Alta Equipment, is to simply research the positions and make that application. If you are a VR counselor, hopefully you received this information well and you can use this with your caseloads moving forward. Once you have a candidate who applies to one of these positions, please follow up with us. Send that candidate information and the application information over to me. My contact information is on the screen. It's watsonl10@michigan.gov, because we'd love to follow up with Sam and Sarah so we can get some good conversation going about our customers. So I know we are over time and I'm trying to speed through this, but Sarah and Sam, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
And with that, we're going to close things out. Everybody have a wonderful day.